It was a calm evening yesterday on channels televisions of Politics Today, until something unexpected happened. Former Abia State Governor and serving Senator Orji Uzor Kalu made a statement that quickly set the political space on fire. Looking very confident, Kalu sat comfortably in his seat as the host asked him a question about the state of politics in the southeast and the growing influence of Peter Obi in Nigerian politics. Kalu adjusted his microphone slightly, leaned forward, and with a confident smile said, "I am the most important politician in the southeast, not Peter Obi." The host paused, trying to process the statement. The studio fell silent for a few seconds. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Then, Kalu continued speaking as if he had just said something completely normal. He explained that he had spent years building political structures across Nigeria, not just in the southeast, and that his connections in Abuja and across the country made him, in his words, a true political pillar. He spoke about how he had been governor long before Peter Obi became one, how he had been part of major national decisions, and how he had supported presidents from different regions. Kalu's tone carried a mixture of pride and authority, as he tried to make it clear that his influence was based on experience, not popularity. At one point, he even said, "Peter Obi is popular on social media, but I built real structures. I have invested my life in politics and business. I understand how this country works." That single sentence changed the mood completely. It became the moment everyone remembered. The host smiled politely, but it was clear that he was surprised by Kalu's confidence. The program continued, but viewers were no longer focused on the other topics. Social media users were already cutting short clips from the interview and sharing them online. Within minutes, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were filled with the same headline. "Kalu, I am the most important politician in the southeast, not Peter Obi." Across Nigeria, reactions started pouring in. Some people agreed with Kalu, saying that he was only speaking the truth. They pointed out that Kalu had held several political offices, had national connections, and was a well-known figure long before Obi entered national politics. Others, however, strongly disagreed. Supporters of Peter Obi immediately went on the offensive. They said that Kalu's time had passed, and that Obi represented a new kind of leadership, one that inspired hope among ordinary people. Some even said that Kalu's statement showed the old mentality of Nigerian politics, where leaders measure their importance by power and position, instead of by service and results. By the end of the program, clips of Kalu's statement had already gone viral. Commentators on radio shows began discussing it, newspapers quickly picked it up, and online blogs gave it sensational headlines. Political analysts said Kalu might have opened a debate that could divide opinions across the southeast. For some, his confidence reminded them of the traditional political power brokers who shaped Nigeria's early democracy. For others, it sounded like arrogance and a refusal to accept the rising influence of Peter Obi, who many young Nigerians now see as a symbol of accountability and hope. In Enugu, Anambra, Imo, and even in parts of Lagos, people could be heard talking about it. Some saw it as unnecessary competition. Others viewed it as a normal rivalry among politicians. But one thing was clear, Kalu's comment had touched a nerve. Political groups that supported Obi quickly released statements online, saying leadership should not be measured by self-importance but by what one has done to improve people's lives. One group wrote, "Peter Obi does not call himself the most important politician. Nigerians gave him that respect because of his character." Meanwhile, some of Kalu's supporters defended him, saying he had every right to remind Nigerians of his political achievements. They argued that politics is not about popularity or social media influence, but about the ability to get things done in government. As the debate continued to spread, analysts began comparing the two men's political journeys. Orji Uzor Kalu, a seasoned businessman turned politician, had once been one of the most powerful figures in Nigeria's political scene, while Peter Obi rose through a quiet but steady path built on reputation, prudence, and integrity. The more people discussed it, the more intense the conversation became. By nightfall, almost every major political commentator had shared an opinion. Television panels revisited the interview, dissecting Kalu's words one sentence at a time. Some said he was trying to reassert his influence in a region now politically dominated by Obi's rising movement. Others said it was simply his honest opinion being blown out of proportion. But what stood out the most was the tone in which Kalu said it, calm, bold, and completely certain of himself. He did not sound like a man who was picking a fight, but like someone who genuinely believed in his own importance. Yet, many Nigerians felt that his choice of words, especially the comparison with Obi, was unnecessary and would only create tension among their supporters. By the time the program ended, the political mood in the southeast had shifted. Newsrooms were buzzing, social media was on fire, and Nigerians everywhere were waiting to hear if Peter Obi would respond. However, those who knew Obi's style understood that he rarely reacts immediately. He prefers to study a situation, weigh his words carefully, and respond only when the noise begins to fade. And true to his nature, he kept silent that night, allowing the whole country to talk first. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time before Peter Obi would respond. The question was not if he would reply, but how. And when he finally did, it turned out to be one of the calmest yet most powerful responses Nigerians had heard in recent times. Early this morning, Peter Obi replied in the way he normally does, calm, measured, and focused on what truly matters. While many expected him to fire back at Orji Uzor Kalu with sharp words, Obi chose a different path entirely. Instead of matching words with words, he chose reason, maturity, and vision. When asked about Kalu's comment, Obi simply said, "My brother, I don't think we Nigerians should start fighting over who's more important or not. That's not what our people need right now." His tone was gentle but firm, the kind of voice that carried meaning without force. It was the kind of response Nigerians have come to expect from him, calm, intelligent, and deeply focused on the bigger picture. He went on to explain that the nation's priority should not be about who holds more political weight or who commands more influence. According to him, the real focus should be on improving the living conditions of ordinary Nigerians. He said, "What matters most is how we can pull people out of poverty, create jobs, fix our economy, and improve our security. That's what leadership should be about." That reply immediately changed the tone of the conversation across the country. People who had been expecting a political clash found themselves listening to a voice of reason. Obi's words reminded everyone that leadership was not a competition of ego or recognition, but a mission to make life better for the people. He further explained that the Southeast and Nigeria as a whole cannot afford to waste time on personal battles. He said, "Our people are struggling. Families cannot feed properly. Graduates are searching for jobs that don't exist. Farmers are afraid to go to their farms because of insecurity. These are the issues that should keep us awake at night, not who is more important or who controls what." As he spoke, Nigerians could sense that his words came from conviction and not political calculation. He spoke like someone who had spent time thinking deeply about the problems facing the nation, and how politics had become more about pride than purpose. In the same response, Obi mentioned that every region in Nigeria needs leaders who think about solutions, not positions. He said it was time for people in power to stop seeing leadership as a personal title and start seeing it as a responsibility. Being called important does not feed anyone. It does not bring peace. It does not give security. What makes a leader truly important is how much difference he makes in people's lives, Obi said. Observers noted that his statement wasn't directed at Kalu personally, but rather at a mindset that has dominated Nigerian politics for years, a mindset where many politicians fight for recognition rather than results. Many who listened to his words described them as a gentle but powerful reminder of what true leadership looks like. Social media users immediately began quoting him, saying his response had once again shown that he was focused on the people and not on personal rivalry. Within hours, his statement began trending on X, formerly Twitter, with the hashtag #ObiSpeaks gaining momentum. Comments flooded in, many calling his reply a lesson in humility. Others said, "This is how mature leaders respond, no insult, no drama, just truth." Political analysts across television and radio stations praised the tone of Obi's reply. They noted that in a country where politicians often respond with aggression, his calmness was refreshing and inspiring. One analyst said, "Peter Obi understands that real power doesn't shout. It speaks softly but moves deeply. Even some who supported Orji Uzor Kalu admitted that Obi's reaction showed emotional intelligence. Instead of dragging the issue, he turned it into a national conversation about poverty, jobs, and insecurity. In one moment, he shifted attention away from himself and Kalu, and back to the people, the ones who actually suffer the consequences of poor leadership. Nigerians online began comparing his statement to the messages he shared during his presidential campaign, messages about frugality, honesty, and putting people first. Many said that this was another reason why Obi had earned so much respect across the country. They felt that he was not trying to prove he was more powerful than anyone, but to prove that leadership could be done differently. He later emphasized that Nigeria would not move forward if politicians continued to focus on personal importance. When we start to argue about who is more important, we lose focus. No one becomes great by shouting their importance. We become great by serving others, Obi stated. His response carried no sign of anger or pride. It sounded like a man who had seen enough of Nigeria's challenges and wanted everyone to redirect their energy toward what truly matters. He reminded everyone that the poor man in Abia, Enugu, or Anambra does not care who is more important among politicians. He only wants to live safely, to eat well, to send his children to school, and to see hope in his country. By mid-afternoon, Obi's message had spread across radio programs and discussion panels. The tone of the conversation had changed completely. What started as a battle of recognition had turned into a discussion about poverty, growth, and national unity. It was as if Obi had taken the noise and turned it into clarity. Analysts called it a quiet masterstroke. Without attacking anyone, Obi managed to calm the situation, remind Nigerians of what leadership truly means, and once again show that he was different from the typical political class. His message left a strong impression not just because of what he said, but how he said it. With patience, humility, and truth. And that was exactly why many Nigerians saw him not just as a politician, but as a symbol of hope for a better, more responsible style of leadership. As evening approached, the headlines had already changed. No one was talking about who was more important anymore, they were now talking about who was more focused. And that was the quiet victory Peter Obi achieved, without shouting, without attacking, and without losing his calm. By afternoon, the entire political atmosphere in Nigeria had shifted. What began as a loud statement from Orji Uzor Kalu on live television had now turned into a national discussion about leadership, character, and what truly defines importance in politics. Peter Obi's calm and thoughtful reply had once again captured the attention of Nigerians from every corner of the country. Across social media platforms, marketplaces, radio stations, and newspaper columns, the debate grew even louder. Some people praised Kalu for his boldness, saying he was right to remind Nigerians of his years of service and experience. Others said Obi's response showed the clear difference between old and new politics, one driven by ego and recognition, the other guided by humility and service. In the streets of Aba, Onitsha, and Enugu, people were seen discussing the issue as if it was a national match. In a small electronics shop in Abia, two men argued for hours. One insisted that Orji Uzor Kalu deserved respect for his long political career, while the other replied that Obi had earned more admiration because of his honesty and integrity. The argument ended not with anger, but with laughter, showing how deeply this topic had captured the nation's mood. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like #ObiVSKalu and #LeadershipMatters were trending. People shared video clips, screenshots, and quotes from both men. But what stood out most were the comments under Obi's statement. Thousands of Nigerians thanked him for bringing maturity into the conversation. A user wrote, "Obi just turned a political brag into a moral lesson for every leader in this country." Another commented, "This is why people respect him. He speaks with peace, not pride." In radio talk shows across the southeast, callers expressed their thoughts passionately. One caller from Nui said, "What Orji Kalu said was unnecessary. People are hungry. They need food, not politicians telling them who is more important." Another caller from Umuahia responded, "Let's not forget that Kalu has done a lot in politics. But Obi's focus on the people is what makes him different." The discussion quickly moved from who was right or wrong to what Nigeria truly needs in its leaders. Journalists and analysts across television channels agreed that Obi's response had shifted the public conversation. Instead of focusing on political rivalry, people were now discussing poverty, unemployment, and insecurity, issues that affect everyone, no matter their political side. In Abuja, a few senators were said to have privately discussed the issue, noting how Obi had once again managed to gain public admiration without confrontation. One of them reportedly said, "That man understands the power of silence and words. He turns every attack into an opportunity to speak about the people." Political commentators described it as a moment that exposed the contrast between two generations of Nigerian politics. Orji Uzor Kalu represented the old order, strong, experienced, and proud of past achievements. Peter Obi represented a new voice, calm, people-centered, and focused on national rebuilding. Both men were influential, but the difference in their communication style revealed where the hearts of most Nigerians now leaned. In churches and social gatherings across the East, the topic also came up. Many pastors and speakers used Obi's statement as an example of humility in leadership. They reminded their listeners that titles do not make a person great, service does. One youth group in Owerri even released a statement praising Obi for restoring dignity to public discourse. Meanwhile, in political circles, strategists were studying the public reaction closely. Some within the ruling class began to quietly admit that the former Anambra governor's influence was not just about social media popularity, as some often claimed. It was about his ability to connect with people's emotions and realities. His calmness, they realized, was not weakness but a form of strength that spoke louder than arguments. By evening, television programs had begun analyzing the broader meaning of the exchange. On Channels Television, the same platform where the story began, analysts revisited Kalu's statement and Obi's reply. One analyst said, "Kalu spoke with authority, Obi replied with wisdom, and Nigeria is now discussing leadership in a deeper way. That is progress." The discussion wasn't just about the two men anymore, it became a reflection of Nigeria's political future. Many young Nigerians said this was exactly the kind of difference they wanted to see between old and new leaders. One university student from Nsukka said, "We are tired of leaders fighting for titles. We want leaders who fight for the people." In political offices, aides and spokespersons monitored the conversation carefully. Some attempted to downplay Obi's response, saying it was a typical diplomatic answer, while others privately admitted that his words had hit the right note with the public. The contrast between confrontation and composure had become clear, and the people seemed to favor the latter. By nightfall, news outlets published editorials with headlines like "Obi redefines leadership again" and "When humility beats pride in politics." Even outside the southeast, in places like Lagos, Abuja, and Kano, Nigerians discussed the story with respect. They said that the kind of political maturity Obi displayed was what the nation needed to heal its divisions. As the hours passed, one thing became clear: Peter Obi's response was not just a reply, it was a reminder. It reminded Nigerians that leadership should never be a contest of ego or pride, but of purpose and progress. He didn't need to shout to be heard. He didn't need to claim importance to prove relevance. His words spoke louder than any boast could ever do. By the next morning, newspaper front pages captured the essence of the moment. Some headlines read, "Obi speaks, nation listens," while others summarized it as "Kalu sparks, Obi calms." It became another moment where Nigeria witnessed how two different styles of politics could define the national mood in just 24 hours. And as Nigerians reflected on it, the question that lingered in everyone's mind was simple but powerful: in a country filled with loud voices and endless political drama, could quiet leadership, honest, calm, and people-centered, be the true path forward? In the end, Peter Obi's calm reply didn't just silence tension, it reshaped the conversation entirely. It reminded Nigerians that the measure of leadership is not found in how loud a person speaks, but in how deeply their words touch the hearts of the people. That was the true victory, not for Obi or Kalu, but for the idea that leadership can still be decent, disciplined, and focused on hope.